I'm Patrick Byers, Horticulture Field Specialist with University of Missouri Extension, based in Webster County. I'd like to share with you a report on the project Growing Blackberry Production and Sales in Missouri, a project recently completed at the University of Missouri Southwest Research Center in Mount Vernon, Missouri. Today I'll talk a bit about the project. We'll talk about the activities that took place in the planting, talk about the results of the Blackberry cultivar trial, and then I'll share some observations based upon this work. Blackberries are a viable crop for farmers in Missouri, but there are some challenges. First of all, challenges related to the growing environment. Missouri can be cold in the winter, hot in the summer, both of which can present challenges for blackberry production. But also farmers and others have been slow to adopt some recent developments in blackberry production. Certainly, new cultivars have been developed that have not been widely planted, and also various production strategies that have been designed to enhance the productivity and the profitability of blackberry production have not been widely adopted. And there's also a lack of knowledge of locally grown blackberries among consumers in Southwest Missouri and in fact across the state of Missouri. This project was developed to address all of these concerns. The Growing Blackberry Production and Sales in Missouri project was initiated in 2015 with funding from the Missouri Department of Agriculture Specialty Crop Block Grant Program. The activities in the project took place in 2016 through 2018. And these activities included the development of a research and demonstration site at the Southwest Research Center, outreach activities across Missouri over the 3 years of the project, and blackberry promotion among consumers in Southwest Missouri. I'll be reporting primarily on the research and demonstration site at the Southwest Research Center. The two primary goals of the project were, first of all, to investigate the productivity and management of blackberries on the rotating cross-arm trellis. We call this the RCA trellis. This is a very innovative way of managing blackberries, and we'll talk more about the specifics of the system here in just a moment. And then secondly, to investigate the performance of a suite of thornless blackberry cultivars on the RCA trellis. Combining both the trellis and these new cultivars, we felt had good potential to revolutionize blackberry production in Missouri. The other three aspects of the project, outreach for farmers, outreach to the public, and the promotion of locally grown blackberries, will not be covered in our report today, other than to mention that we've reached over 300 farmers with the information developed into the project, and over 1,000 members of the public have benefited from this particular project. And we've shared the delights of locally grown blackberries with over 800 people who've sampled fresh blackberries produced in this project through a range of outreach activities. The RCA trellis offers several advantages to blackberry farmers. First of all, it can be a huge help from the standpoint of easy and efficient harvest. The fruit is concentrated on one side of the canopy. It's positioned in such a way that it's easy to harvest, and it's placed in the shade of the canopy so that harvest is more comfortable. We see improved productivity with this trellis system. Projects in both this current project and projects elsewhere have demonstrated improvements in yield of 50 to 75%. We also see enhanced control of blackberry pests, including spotted wing Drosophila, as this system allows for better coverage of the fruit with pest management chemicals. We see less sunscald damage on the fruit as the fruit is produced in the shade of the canopy. And the system allows for the rotation of the canopy to a horizontal position during the winter so that the plants can be protected with row covers from winter conditions. There are some disadvantages. It's an expensive system to install and establish in the planting. It can be difficult to learn how to train and prune. It requires specialized training to effectively manage blackberry on the RCA trellis. And it is certainly a system that is management intensive. Some pictures of how the system operates. Here we see the system in its horizontal position. First of all, from late fall to early spring during the dormant season, when the planting is protected with floating row covers, as we see in the upper picture. The lower picture shows the planting in the spring during the flowering period from March to May. The plants are maintained in this horizontal position until the flower clusters, all of which will orient in an upright position, are fixed in their position on the plant. The planting is then reoriented into a position slightly past vertical, with the flower and developing fruit clusters now oriented in a downward fashion on the shady side of the trellis. The picture on the left shows the trellis in the fall as we're preparing to lay it down. So again, it maintains this position from late spring following flowering until the period of time just before dormancy in late fall, when it will be laid back down into the horizontal position. The project investigated a number of thornless blackberry cultivars. There were 5 cultivars that were traditional floricane fruiting cultivars that produced their crop on second-year shoots. These included Natchez, Osage, Washita, Apache, and Triple Crown, listed in the order of ripening. We also included 2 primocane fruiting cultivars, Freedom and Traveler. This is a revolutionary new type of blackberry that produces berries on first-year shoots and then a second crop on that same shoot in the second year. The planting was, again, located at the Southwest Research Center in Mount Vernon, which is Hardiness Zone 6B. It was funded through a Missouri Department of Agriculture grant. Established in 2016, it cropped in 2017, and we had a full crop in 2018. The planting consisted of 3 rows that were 12 feet apart. Each row was 132 feet long, and the rows were oriented east and west. The plants were spaced 5 feet apart within the row. We organized the planting in plots of 3 plants per cultivar, and there were 3 plots per cultivar to give us a replicated planting. The plants were established on raised beds that were covered with landscape fabric. There was a single 18-millimeter drip line under the fabric with inline emitters at 18-inch spacing. This is how we watered the planting, and it's also how we fertilized the planting through fertigation. We used standard cultural practices for blackberries. We fertigated weekly from April through September. And over the entire season, we applied the equivalent of 80 pounds of nitrogen per acre through fertigation. The floricane fruiting cultivars were pruned as recommended for the RCA trellis. And for more information on this, please reach out to me for details on how the plants were managed under this system. The primocane fruiting cultivars were pruned in a fan shape on the RCA trellis. Here we see the establishment season in 2016, the planting laid out with raised beds that are covered with woven landscape fabric. The trellis arms were installed in April of 2016, and then the planting was installed in early May of 2016. The upper picture shows the trellis with the wires in place and the primocane laterals being trained in an upright fashion on the trellis. The middle picture shows the trellis in its horizontal position during the winter of 2016-2017. The row covers were then removed in March of 2017, and the orientation remained horizontal till post-flowering. Then they were raised into the fruiting position. The results of the cultivar trial on the RCA trellis, we harvested a floricane crop in 2017 and 2018. 2017 was the first year of harvest. Typically, that would be about 1/3 to 1/2 of expected harvest and full harvest in the planting. And then we had a full harvest in 2018. The primocane crop was harvested in 2017 only. One of the limitations of primocane brambles is that they do not set flowers or have an appreciable crop in warm seasons. And the 2018 season was a warm season. We had poor flower set, and the fruit crop was not sufficient to justify harvest. The floricane crop in 2017-2018 was harvested 1 to 3 times per week. As the season grew, we moved further into the season and temperatures warmed, we harvested more frequently. We harvested all of the crop per plant, and we then collected a representative sample of 25 berries from each plot per harvest. And so we weighed not only the yield, but also the weight of 25 berries to come up with a mean berry size for the planting. All data were analyzed using a statistical analysis system, SAS, and we used Fisher's LSD at the 0.05 level to separate the means. The floricane harvest dates in 2017 were typical for both harvest seasons, so I record them here. Again, in order of ripening, the floricane crop was Natchez, Traveler, Freedom, Osage, Washita, Apache, and Triple Crown, beginning in June 6th and then ranging through July 10th. Peak harvest was reached on several cultivars in mid to late June, and the final harvest on the floricane crop was as late as early September with Apache. This illustration points out the harvest seasons for the different cultivars in the trial, and each colored line represents a different cultivar. I'll point out that we had a lot of blackberries in the period of time from the last week in June through the third week in July, with all of the cultivars ripening then. We had a second peak then in late July to early August with Triple Crown, and to a lesser extent with Apache. And then we had the primocane crop that began in August and continued through the arrival of cold weather in October. Looking at the mean separation, as we look across both the 2017 and the 2018 total yield, the standouts were Natchez and Triple Crown. Although we had an appreciable yield for the floricane crop on everything except Freedom. The floricane crop on Freedom, quite frankly, was disappointing, but certainly an adequate crop. And in the second year, which we would consider to be the full cropping year, we had over 20 pounds of fruit harvested per plant on both Natchez and Triple Crown, which is that's an excellent yield for blackberries in Missouri. Looking at berry size, certainly Primark Freedom was the largest berry, but the berry size on Apache and Natchez was impressive as well. All of the cultivars had a berry size that we judged sufficient for commercial purposes. As I mentioned, the primocane harvest was not collected in 2018 due to a lack of fruit. In 2017, our harvest again began in late July and continued through early October, and again the arrival of cool weather. Looking at berry size, certainly Freedom had the largest berries by far, but Traveler had the largest yield by far. So again, this indicates that if a person is willing to accept the fact that there may not be good harvests in years with warm summers, Traveler would be a better choice than Freedom, at least based upon the results of this particular trial. Some general observations. The RCA trellis does require management. It also requires labor, but it can be extremely productive. The idea of 20 pounds of blackberries per plant is a remarkable yield for blackberries under Missouri conditions. Natchez and Triple Crown were productive. They had large to medium-sized berries, which were certainly commercially sufficient, and they have a growth habit that works well with the RCA trellis system. The other cultivars trialed work with the system as well, but Natchez and Triple Crown in particular have the right type of growth habit. Be careful when training primocanes. I didn't get into details as far as the strategies to train blackberries to this system, but very important to manage primocanes properly during the early part of the growing season, and it's important to do this in a timely fashion. Pest management, particularly spotted-winged Drosophila and Japanese beetles, can be very damaging on blackberries, and management is critically important. As soon as harvest is done, floricanes must be removed to train the laterals of the primocanes for the next season's crop. So as soon as floricane harvest is done, remove the floricanes. And again, the indication are that the primocane crop is not going to be profitable on the RCA trellis under Missouri conditions. So think carefully before planting primocane blackberries on a commercial scale in Missouri. I certainly want to thank my collaborators, Andrew Thomas from the Southwest Research Center. He is the horticultural researcher there. Eileen Nichols, market manager of the Webb City Farmers Market, was the primary investigator on this project and a huge support for the project. My collaborators, Robert Ballack with MU Extension, and then my collaborators, Nishan Bishop and David Middleton of Lincoln University Extension, were instrumental in the success of the project. The harvest on the project was driven by our volunteers, and I can't express my appreciation enough to the volunteers who came out consistently and faithfully to help harvest the blackberries. And here we see several of them in this picture. And certainly we want to express appreciation to the Missouri Department of Agriculture for support for this project. Further information on this project is available from Patrick Byers. Certainly email me or give me a call at this phone number. I would be excited to share with you details, first of all, of the RCA trellis system and the performance of the thornless cultivars on this system, but certainly to give you a balanced picture of the potential for the RCA trellis to help grow blackberry production in Missouri. Thank you very much.